heard of dukes, earls, and lords. But what did they actually do all day? In Tudor England, being noble was a full-time job, filled with estate management, military service, and the constant work of staying in royal favor. A noble title came with expectations. Nobles were the monarch's local representatives, their financiers, their generals, and sometimes their enemies. Hey, my friend, settle in, get comfy, grab a beverage, and today we are going to answer the question, what did the nobility actually do? How did they run their estates, govern the countryside, and hold England together, often while trying not to lose their heads? Hi, friend. Welcome back to the YouTube channel for the Renaissance English History Podcast. I am your host, Heather, and I have been podcasting on Tudor England since 2009 with my show, which makes it the original Tudor History Podcast. I am, as usual, delighted, ecstatic, joyfully grateful that you are here with me today to talk about the Tudor nobility. Let's start with what made a noble noble. In Tudor England, the peerage ran Duke at the top, then Earl, Viscount, and Baron. Marquess existed, but it was vanishingly rare, perhaps 3 or 4 in the entire period. These peers had the right to sit in the House of Lords and directly advise the monarch. They stood above the gentry, which were prosperous knights and gentlemen who might aspire to noble rank, but beneath the royalty. Nobility was generally hereditary and tied to land. Land meant wealth, power, and influence. Each noble's authority rested on 3 pillars: landholding as the economic base, service to the crown as political legitimacy, and social obligation as local leadership. In theory, nobles existed to uphold the king's peace, enforce royal policy, and provide military service when called. In reality, they were power brokers whose fortunes rose or fell with royal favor. For most nobles, the heart of their work wasn't actually at court, it was on their land. Their estates could stretch across several counties, producing wealth through rents, agriculture, and feudal dues. Managing this required a serious amount of infrastructure. They employed stewards to oversee entire estates, and bailiffs to handle day-to-day manor operations, making sure that tenants paid and fields were tended. Being a landlord meant more than just collecting rent. It actually meant leadership. Nobles acted as patrons. They offered jobs, they offered protection and charity in exchange for loyalty. Their tenants looked to them in times of crisis. In return, nobles expected support in everything from local disputes to national politics. The Duke of Norfolk controlled vast East Anglian estates and could summon hundreds of retainers in his livery at a moment's notice. The Earl of Shrewsbury ruled over parts of Yorkshire and Derbyshire almost like a regional governor. A major noble household could have hundreds of servants, retainers, and clients, a parallel government structure. Nobles were the backbone of Tudor local administration. Before England developed centralized bureaucracy, the nobility maintained law and order, enforced the king's justice, and kept the countryside running. Their halls weren't just private homes. They were hubs of administration and power. If managing estates was one half of a noble's duty, serving the monarch was the other. The nobility existed to support the crown, militarily, politically, and, of course, ceremonially. When the king went to war, nobles were expected to raise troops from their tenants and to lead them into battle. The Percy family, for example, had fought for centuries on the northern borders, and that continued under the Tudors. The Earl of Shrewsbury again led forces in the 1536 Pilgrimage of Grace for the crown. The Earl of Surrey commanded at Flodden in 1513. War wasn't the only service. Nobles also filled the upper ranks of government, sitting on the Privy Council, serving as ambassadors, or holding offices like the Lord Admiral, Lord Steward, or Lord Chamberlain. Their rank made them natural administrators of the realm. Their loyalty, or lack of it, could make or break a monarch. Royal favor was everything. A noble's fortunes could change overnight depending on who held the king's ear. The Dudleys, the Seymours, and the Howards all learned this lesson. Service brought prestige and influence, but also a fair bit of danger. The closer you stood to power, the easier it was to fall. Each noble household was a world of its own, a miniature version of the royal court, complete with a hierarchy, ceremony, and politics. The head of the household employed chaplains, secretaries, cooks, falconers, musicians, and often dozens or hundreds of servants and retainers. These retainers wore the lord's livery badge and owed him loyalty, forming networks of influence across the country. Some great lords could summon so many armed men that the crown viewed them as threats. Before Henry VII cracked down on livery and maintenance through acts in 1487 and 1504, these private armies made noble rivalries genuinely dangerous. That's where so much of the Wars of the Roses, so much of those fights came from. The household also served as a symbol of prestige. Visitors judged a noble by the quality of their hospitality, the splendor of their table, and the efficiency of their servants. Hosting the monarch during a royal progress was both an honor and a financial nightmare. Nobles really bankrupted themselves trying to impress the crown. Elizabeth I was particularly notorious for lengthy, expensive visits. In a world where appearances mattered almost as much as loyalty, maintaining a certain level of splendor was part of the job. Noble women wielded significant authority too, especially when their husbands were away or had died. They would manage estates, arrange marriages, and oversee enormous domestic staffs. Some became political powerhouses like Bess of Hardwicke, who climbed the ranks of society through shrewd marriages and sharp business sense, building the magnificent Hardwicke Hall, more glass than wall, as they say, completed in 1597, as a statement of just how successful she was. Margaret Beaufort, mother of Henry VII, also carefully maneuvered during the Wars of the Roses to position her son eventually for the throne. Women like these were state managers and financiers and diplomats, balancing household demands, property, and politics. Their letters show constant work, negotiating dowries, collecting debts, keeping family alliances intact. A noblewoman's competence could mean the difference between a dynasty that thrived and one that vanished into debt and obscurity. When nobles weren't overseeing land or serving the monarch, they were expected to embody refinement. They sponsored poets and painters and musicians, turning their homes into cultural centers. Patronage was a mark of sophistication, but also a political tool. Supporting the right playwright or architect could broadcast taste and loyalty in equal measure. Entertainment also had its own hierarchy. Hunting was practically compulsory for men of rank. It showed off just how courageous you were, how much wealth you had, and how much control over the land. Falconry, jousting, and elaborate masks filled the social calendar. These weren't just pastimes, they were opportunities for networking, subtle flattery, and showing off your place in the social order. At court, the stakes were even higher. A noble would need a London house to stay visible and close to the center of power. A single misstep, a poorly timed comment, a failed favor, or a rival's whisper could undo decades of careful service. The Elizabethan court was a battlefield fought with smiles, poetry, and perfectly rehearsed flattery. The nobility worked constantly. Their lives revolved around managing land, maintaining loyalty, and surviving a system where their fortunes were entirely tied to the monarch's whims. They were landlords and generals and diplomats and administrators all rolled into one. They oversaw justice, they managed armies, and they ran households the size of small villages. Their privilege came with enormous responsibility and risk. So the Tudor nobility were essential, powerful, and frequently unstable. The people who actually ran England on the ground. Being noble wasn't just about being super wealthy, it was actually about kind of surviving the job. And as you see, so many people did not. So it was a very risky job as well. I think that I would have liked to have not been noble, and just been a member of that gentry class. I think they even have it pretty good as part of that gentry class. We'll talk about what they did in a future video. So let me know in the comments, would you have wanted to be noble, or are you happy to just give that a pass? Yeah, I think I know for me. Anyway, we will leave it there for now in talking about the nobility. Hey, I want to show you my hoodie that I'm wearing. This is available in my shop as part of my Yuletide collection. So it's a beautiful Tudor rose with a crown and a little bit of holly there to be festive. It's an oversized heavyweight hoodie. It's super furry and soft on the inside. And so this is embroidered actually too. So it's a little bit fancy for the holidays. So it's embroidered with this white thread. And on the side, it also has this on the sleeve. It says historically cozy, also embroidered. So I'm a big fan of this hoodie. I've been wearing it everywhere since I got mine. It's a little understated, a little bit of a classy hoodie for the holidays. It's also keeping me very warm. So I'm a big fan. You can get it. I have a whole bunch of Christmas holiday things on my shop at tudorfair.com, and I'm adding more every week. So you can check that out, tudorfair.com. You can also use the code YouTube to save 10% off of your order. So tudorfair.com for your holiday decorating Tudorific needs. There's wrapping paper in cool Tudor patterns, really cool fuzzy Sherpa blankets, all kinds of cool stuff. All right, so we will leave it there for now. Yeah, let me know in the comments. Would you want to be noble or not? I would love to know your thoughts on that. If you would like to keep watching content on Tudor nobility, here's a video on the Stanleys, a really interesting noble family, tracing them from their beginning. And here is a video that YouTube thinks you'll like. Remember, my friend, you are deeply loved. I am so glad we share the planet with each other. You make the world a better place, and I'm so grateful that we got to spend this time talking about Tudor history. I will be back very, very soon. In the meantime, don't forget to drink your water, friend. Bye-bye.